The next interview is with Ed Kennelly.
Hi, my name's Gene Horton, and we're at the Bayport-Blue Point Library. And this afternoon, we're interviewing Ed Kennelly of Bayport, a lifetime Bayporter. And the date today is May 21st, 2013, and we welcome Ed. And we thank him for coming in to share his memories of Bayport.
Glad to be here.
A lifelong Bayporter.
Yes.
You don't meet many of them.
Pardon?
You don't meet too many lifelong.
Oh, is that right?
It's wonderful. Yes.
Right. Well, today I'm 86 years old.
Wow.
And so I have memories back to probably 30.
Yeah.
My family built the house on Bayport Avenue, 280 Bayport Avenue. And when they brought me home from the hospital, they moved into the new house. Prior to that, they lived just north of the railroad track in the house on the west side of Bayport. There's only one house there.
Oh, yes.
And they lived in that house. They were building the house on Bayport Avenue.
Wow.
So most of my early memories, are from Bayport Avenue. Gene Hammond's Bayport house was just about diagonally across the railroad, the Bayport Avenue. And there were a lot of vacant lots that you could play ball on in those days, in the 30s.
Not many vacant lots today.
So I don't believe any vacant lots on Bayport Avenue anymore.
No. Isn't that amazing?
But I can remember a lot of the old neighbors that were there years ago. And I remember when Bayport Avenue was paved.
Really?
Yeah, I sat on the curb as a little boy, maybe 2 or 3 years old, watching them, the big trucks. That was a big thing to do in those days.
You know what's nice about Bayport Avenue today? It's still cement.
Yeah, it's still cement.
I like that.
They did a good job of mixing the cement.
They did a good job.
Yeah.
Because that road's been there for, 80 years?
Probably a little more than 80. I must have been about 5 years old, I guess. It's been there 80 years, I guess.
And they never asphalted over that. It's still the cement road. The sides are asphalt.
They didn't asphalt the sides until a few years later.
Yeah.
And put in the curbs. And the sidewalk on Bayport Avenue on the west side was asphalt.
That was asphalt.
Yeah.
And there's only a sidewalk on one side. The other one doesn't.
Yeah. That's correct.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I can remember when we'd have a heavy snowstorm. Mr. Stryker from the dairy farm would come down with his horses in a wooden plow and plow out the sidewalks. And when the Antoses built their house, maybe 3-4 houses down from ours, Strikers dug the cellar with a horse and a scoop.
Wow.
And I sat on the neighbor's porch watching that. That was very interesting.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah. So, my early memories are all just mostly around Bayport Avenue.
Yeah.
Behind our house was a woodland that ran from Railroad Street all the way to Middle Road. There was no houses or anything in between. It was just a swath of forest that must have been part of the Homan property, because Homan Creek is where I live now.
Yeah.
And we used to cut through that woods to get to school, just like diagonally cutting across through the woods. So,
and then you went to Bayport.
Yeah, the Bayport. It was just one little brick schoolhouse.
Yeah.
The one, it only had been built in, I believe, about 1927, because in the late 20s, the old one burned down.
Yes.
And the kids had to go to school down in an old house that was on the bay at the end of Fairview Avenue, the corner of Fairview Avenue and Newport Street.
And that was a house, just a house?
It was a big old house there. There's a picture of it in the Heritage, one of the Heritage pictures.
Okay.
And it shows that picture of that house there, and my sister and a neighbor, Eileen Deacon, are sitting on the bulkhead there in front of in the background is that house.
Now that house is gone today, I presume.
Oh, it burned down
It
in
burned
in
down.
the 40s.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah.
And where was that house? Down the end of Snedeker?
No, on the end of Fairview
At the end of
Avenue
Fairview.
on Newport Street.
On Newport
That was
Street.
the only building down there at that time.
Wow. And they used that as a school.
Yes, well,
Amazing.
it had been vacant for quite a few
okay.
years, and I believe it was a Fresh Air Fund, a Herald Tribune, or
okay.
something like that,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
used to bring children out there in the summertime
Oh.
that were underprivileged.
Because it must have
Right on
taken
the
a
bay.
while from the fire at Bayport School to the opening of the new school.
Yeah,
They
so
probably
that-
had to use that for a year or more.
Yes, yeah, about a year.
Wow. And then they
It's
built
amazing
the-
how fast they could build a
Yeah.
building back in those days
Really?
without all the modern
1 year.
equipment. Yeah.
And they had new school.
Right.
And then Bayport School, that one building would have
Added-
everybody from first grade up to
High school.
12th grade.
Yeah. They added an addition on the north side as that flat section,
Oh, yes.
and
Okay.
the floors didn't meet. You had to go down a couple
Oh.
of stairs, up a couple of stairs. It wasn't
okay.
very handicapped.
Oh, it wasn't handicapped accessible.
No.
And did the school you went to, did they actually have a gym?
Yes, the gym.
did have a
yeah.
gym.
Oh yeah, it's still there.
Yeah.
You'd walk in the front door, and there were quite a few steps up.
Right.
The first floor was maybe almost 8 feet above grade level. And then when you walked across the hallway that ran north and south,
Yes.
there was a big door there that opened on sloping seats that went down to the basketball
Oh,
court.
that's interesting.
And then on the other side was the stage. So it was a multi-purpose room.
Multi. And what year did you graduate from high school?
I graduated in 1945,
45. Wow.
just near the end of the World War II.
That's
and,
right.
I was drafted shortly afterwards.
Yeah.
And luckily, I wasn't in combat. I was
No.
only in the service a couple of months when they dropped the bomb on
Hiroshima ended it.
That was a big
Yeah.
monkey off your back.
Yeah, that was a big one. Yeah, it's over.
Yeah, it's over. I
it
was
would've
in
been-
basic training in Camp Croft, South Carolina.
So this way, at least the war was over.
Yeah.
So did you ever go overseas or just?
Yes, I spent.
Yes.
I was shipped overseas in December of 1945 and was Army of Occupation, and I was in the city of Berlin for the first winter.
Wow, that must have been a bad winter.
It was terrible.
And was it cold? I mean, the weather was against you, or?
No, it was just mean and nasty
Mean.
weather. It's always gray. You know, it was the sun. I don't think shone.
And
shone
Berlin
always.
must have been in ruins.
Oh, it was in
Ruins.
It was in ruins. It was. I was very fortunate.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I was in the band for a few years, and
Yeah.
they were looking for somebody to play in the band, the military band over in Berlin.
Yeah.
And we had all sorts of privileges that the infantry guys
Yeah.
didn't have.
You didn't happen to see President Truman there at Potsdam, did you?
No,
He
we
went
were
over there. He went to Berlin.
I didn't see him at that time. I think it was before I got there. I got there in
Okay.
December. I think he was there.
He might have been there a couple of weeks, months earlier.
Right. He became president. I believe it was in
April.
March of April.
April of 1945, when Franklin
Well, that's
Roosevelt
my
died.
birthday month. So went in. We're getting a little out of Bayport.
Yeah, we are. We're out of Bayport, but still interesting.
Yeah.
I know the class of 1945, one of the things I remember about it, they put out a yearbook.
Yes, that was the first
That was
year.
the first yearbook.
Yearbook, that's correct.
And you know, the library here has all the yearbooks, including that one,
Yeah.
which is a treasure.
I have that home.
You have that too?
Yeah,
Class of
actually,
45.
yeah.
And they called the yearbook the
I named
stepping.
it.
You named it.
Yes,
I
the
didn't know
stepping
that.
stone, yeah.
And you know they still have that name today?
Yes,
The
yes.
Stepping Stone.
Right.
Isn't that
I-
wonderful?
Laying in bed, they were.
Yeah,
they
the
were,
stepping
they were, they were,
stone.
yeah, they were.
I never knew that.
Oh, I don't think many people did.
No.
No.
Stepping Stone.
Yeah.
It's nice they still use that.
Yes.
Now, you know what I just found out today?
It's very graphic. I
yeah,
thought
very.
it was.
Because you're making steps.
Your life.
It's a step toward your adult life. The
I'm
stepping
getting
stone.
pretty near the end of the the last stone.
Oh, Now, when you were in school, they didn't call it the Phantoms, did they? That
Yes,
wasn't-
they called it the
They
Phantoms.
did.
Yeah.
I just read on Facebook today
Yeah.
that somebody in the school would like to change the name of the team to another name. And that's not going over well, I'll tell you that.
It's amazing how the younger generation. A few
Yeah.
years back, they wanted to change the name of the James Wilson Young High School.
I know.
And they finally changed the name of it and made that the
middle school.
Middle school, yeah.
Because that's the only
No one
school. It's the only school we have in Bayport or Blue Point that's named after a person.
Yeah.
James Wilson Young. And if you would ask anybody in town who was he, they really don't know who he
I
was.
knew him quite well.
You did, yeah.
I can remember I had to go to get a reference from him for some reason. I can't. I guess it was the Boy Scouts when I was in the Boy Scouts.
Oh, okay. You'd go to the
Yeah.
Board of Education president.
Right.
And he lived right on Bayport Avenue.
Yeah, he lived on Bayport Avenue, Folger Street.
Sure, Folger Street.
Well, in those days, you knew everybody in
Yep.
town practically.
Yes.
I don't know what the population was at that time, but it couldn't have been much more than 1,500 or so.
Oh. And there's still a lot of old houses on Bayport Avenue.
Oh, yes.
A lot of them.
Yeah, I know pretty much who lived in them, every house,
Oh, I'm sure you do.
Yeah. And at that time, the post office naturally was down in the village. And the first one I can remember was opposite the firehouse. Now, the firehouse is down there with that row of office buildings.
Where Shands used to be.
Shands used to be.
Yeah.
And there's a little house on the right alongside of where there used to be a liquor store in there. Now it's a health store,
it's
food store.
Ms. Michelle.
Yeah.
Her
No,
the next.
Oh,
that's right. It's Rita's Fine Foods or something like that.
Well, the house to the west of that had one room, and there was a corner door on the northeast corner of that building that had a little office in there for the.
Yeah.
And you had to go pick up the mail.
There's no delivery.
And then soon, I guess Mr. Mantha built a little store in between where the deli is and the hairdresser is.
Yeah.
The hairdresser used to be Bill Stewart's plumbing shop.
Oh, okay. That was Spotlight today.
Yeah, right. And the building there is now
Pilates?
Pilates.
I always say pilots when I say it, but Pilates?
Pilates or something
Whatever
like that. It's an exercise place. I don't understand what it is. But that was the post office.
That was the post office right there.
Right. And of course the firehouse, and we're getting a little ahead of things here, I guess.
Yeah.
I had some things outlined in my mind, but that was one phase of my life when the firehouse. During the war, they were looking. There were men. All the men were out of town fighting the war, and they took all the 16-year-olds in high school who wanted to join. And I had belonged to the juvenile fire department before that, I could get into the fire department when I was 16. So I just got my 70-year pin from the Bayport Fire Department.
70 years.
70 years in the fire department.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Oh.
And
they have great uniforms.
Right.
They do.
Well, I fit in there very well because they made me assistant foreman. In those days, it was foreman and assistant foreman were the officers and chief.
Yeah.
And we had gotten a new truck through the government because they're trying to make sure that all the villages had modern equipment. Up until that time, we only had an old pumper. I mean, that's another story of the history of the Bayport Fire Department, but I'm telling my history of it with them.
Yeah, of course.
And so I was made assistant foreman, and because I learned the new truck that they got from the Department of Defense, I guess you'd call it at that time, and all the men who usually would have learned that. Here I'm just a kid, and I picked it up right away, and so that was one phase of my life that I was a racing team member, and
I always liked the old tower.
that was a hose tower.
Beautiful
That was a
tower.
hose tower.
Hose tower.
Hose dryer.
You put the hoses up there.
You pull the hose up with a rope.
Okay.
See, in those days, all the hoses were cotton jacketed.
Oh, okay.
And if you put them back on the truck, they would rot.
They'll rot.
It'll get all mildew.
Yeah.
So we used to have to dry them before
Dry
we
them
put
up
them.
there.
Yeah. So we always had another set of hose.
Oh.
You know.
Now, was there a bell up in that tower way up?
I don't know where that bell was.
I know there's a bell outside.
The bell is on the front lawn of the
Yes.
present firehouse. I don't remember it down at the old
I
firehouse.
wonder if it was up top in that tower. I don't know.
When I first joined down there was an the first motorized piece of equipment they had was a 1819 Rio, and it was a chemical fire truck.
Sure.
It was just like a great big fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
They carried enough water, but it was soda and acid that mix.
Yeah.
And that truck was given to start the fire department up there in Gordon Heights.
Gordon Heights.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. That was one phase of my life, and then
The fire department.
then I went into the service.
Yeah.
And luckily for the service, I had the bill of GI Bill.
Oh, the GI Bill,
And
sure.
that I would have never have been able to go to school without
Yeah,
the GI.
I know.
Without the GI Bill.
That was very valuable.
Yeah, so I got into one college that was just started for the returning GIs up in Sampson College,
Good.
up along the Great Lakes. It was right on Lake Seneca, near Geneva, and I drove a Model A Ford from Bayport to Geneva for that year that I went there. I only went there 1 year. And then from there, I transferred to Syracuse because they had just finished building out of an old a factory that manufactured jet engines, a new building for the engineering department. So that's where I started my career as going to school at Syracuse.
Wow.
Graduated there in 1952.
52.
I had a few jobs, but then I landed a job at Grumman. I worked for one of my first jobs was when I was 14, was working for Mr. Alwater at the Bayport Flower House.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. And I didn't stay there very long because down in the village of Bayport, Mantas had a little manufacturing place there where they manufactured parts for Grumman. So one day I went down there. I loved to go in there. They had all the belts that went over the top and ran all the machines. And I walked in, I saw Mr. Manta reading in my comment, and he was having a little trouble with his glasses. I could see he was getting old. So I looked over his shoulder and I read what was on the micrometer. He couldn't read this? I said, yeah.
Sure.
So he says, you want a job? I was 15 years old. So I sat in there at the machines, and he kept pushing me ahead and to work on more and more sophisticated machine. So then, after the war, I was then drafted, and after the war, I went to Syracuse and worked for Bayport Lumber for a few years during the time after I started going to college.
Yeah.
In the summers, I worked for Bayport Lumber for a couple of years, and then I got a job with National Dairy Research, where the old Vanderbilt, a lot of people have forgotten about that, where the old Vanderbilt mansion was.
Yes.
That was bought by National Dairy, which was a division of one of the big dairies, I forget now. But I worked there for 1 year, I guess. It was the last year of before I graduated, and it was like a college campus.
Yeah.
It was beautiful set up. That was when the building itself was all original. It would get burned out. And they lost all the tapestries. The wall was all tapestry.
And that's Dowling today.
That's
isn't it?
Dowling today.
Yeah.
So after that, I went to work for Grumman, and I was there 36 years, and was involved with the proposal effort on both the F-14 and the lunar lander.
Oh, yeah.
module. I was in the research department at Grumman for 36 years. And when we were doing the proposal work, at that time I was doing the design work for science. We had a lot of PhDs. I didn't have a PhD.
Yeah.
And they were doing a lot of research on handling qualities of aircraft. They had a few aircraft that men couldn't control because they just couldn't keep up with it. So when it got to the lunar lander, they wanted to make sure that all of that would work and the man could control this thing that's sitting on a jet engine, So we had rooms full of computers, as big as this room, the whole thing there, just loaded with analog computers, they were called at those days. They didn't have digital computers.
No.
They had them, but the digital computer didn't operate in real time.
Oh.
It took an hour maybe to solve a problem that happened in 10 minutes or something. I don't know remember what the ratio was. But man can't stand that. He has to have one-to-one. It has to solve the equations of motion immediately.
Yeah.
So I came up with an idea, which the company bought, and we built what they called a motion simulator to help give the motion feedback to the pilot. That's very important. Any accelerations and stuff, it helps him, plus visual. So during the LEM proposal stage, we had a lot of the young astronauts come in to fly this machine. And I was very smart. I had them sign a picture. I have it home. It has 8 of the astronauts on it. I was going to bring it in here today, but I don't want to take a chance with it.
No.
But I have that at home. All their signatures on this picture of this thing that I helped build. It wasn't just me. It was a lot of people involved with it.
That was wonderful.
Yeah. And before that, it was the F-14. We were proposing on that, and there was a lot of problems with handling qualities. Some of the airplanes that they had built, they would... The pilot would push and get out of phase, and the next thing he couldn't control it. So we built a machine to see, and what they did was put bob weights on it. They call it bob weights on the stick, so that it would help dampen out what he was doing. So that was another phase of my life, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was interested in flying, so I took up flying at the airdrome when...
Airdrome.
Yeah. And I have a lot of pictures in here. I got involved with the sailplaning, and I became president of that club in the early member of that club. God. Yeah. That's another phase of my life.
What was the name of the aerodrome? Was that Davis?
It was
Davis Field.
It was Davis Field at the time.
Field.
And then a man by the name of Edwards bought it, and then it was Edwards Airport for a while.
Okay. Now it's just Bayport Aerodrome.
He sold it to the town.
Oh, yes.
And he was sort of forced to do that because he wanted to sell it. But there was another piece, 5 acres on the west side that belonged to another man by the name, I think, Walter Bob. And he didn't want him to leave. And he was smart because when he bought that 5 acres from George, he had lifetime use of an airport.
Oh, okay.
So George was kind of stuck on selling it. He couldn't get... there was a developer breathing down on him that wanted to buy all that land.
Sure, they want the property.
Yeah. And all that land on North Bayport Avenue, there were only 2 houses when I was a kid. There were the DePietros and their relatives that lived up there, and that was about all. There was all those lots were sold, little tiny lots through the Brooklyn Eagle. They were advertised back in the 20s, I guess it is.
Right, for summer homes.
Summer homes. And people bought them, and then came the Depression, and they all laid fallow for many, many years. And even in the 40s, they were empty. They didn't start building north of Montauk Highway. The only road that had any houses on it was 3rd Avenue.
Oh, 3rd did, huh?
Yeah, 2nd and 1st Avenue wasn't even cut through at the time. It was just woods went up. And those woods went all the way up to Port Jefferson.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah. Sylvan Avenue at that time ended at Church Street. And from
that was the
up
end of
there, there was a fire road that went all the way up to Hotesville. The kids in Hotesville went to Bayport High School at that time.
What were they, bust down?
They were bust down. Farmingville and Hotesville. Yeah.
Bust into
and
Bayport.
with all those people coming in Blue Point, coming to Bayport, I think we graduated with about less than 30 in the class. So that was another phase of my life. You know, I could spend hours on each one of these phases, you know, talking,
Wonderful.
reminiscing about what I did. Then I got involved with scootering, ice scootering.
Out on the bay.
Out on the bay.
Winter.
And I ended up having a very fast boat. I won my share of the trophies.
What was the name of the boat?
Big Scoot.
Big Scoot?
Yeah.
Scoot
I still
racing.
have it.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Do you ever take it out anymore in a cold?
Why? You don't take it out when the ice is on the bay. When is the last time you saw the bay?
Where's the ice?
Yeah, where's the global warming?
Global warming.
So I made a bad investment.
Yeah, well, it's still fun. Yeah.
So then I had that was I even built my own scooter, which was a failure.
Yeah, the scooter races. They used to have scooter races.
Didn't work too well. I had big ideas, but you ran out of ice.
Where's the
I didn't
ice?
have enough ice to
You gotta have ice for the scooters.
Yeah. You know, those scooters took years and years, I guess almost 50 years to develop so that they were as fast as they are.
And how fast do they really go? Is it be like 30
I would
miles
say
an hour?
they go about 60 miles an hour.
60?
Yeah.
That's pretty fast.
Yeah. We timed it a couple of times going back and forth, but it's hard to get some accurate distance.
It is, I'm sure.
But now today's with a GPS, you just carry a GPS on board.
Electronically.
Yeah, but we never knew. A lot of people would claim 60, some more and some less, and I don't really know. But they were fast.
They used to have races, didn't they? Scooter races.
Yeah. There was a whole club, just a big club. I was Commodore of that for a while.
You were?
Yeah.
I wish they still did that.
Well, they do. It's ice.
If there's cooperation with weather.
Right.
Yes. I remember at one point seeing cars drive out onto the bay.
Oh, yeah. I've seen them out there.
A little risky.
But, I don't think I'd. After going through the holes once in a while, I spent my time swimming in the wintertime.
Yeah. I know you want to get wet.
Yeah, the scooters the modern scooter is not stable in the water. It's only good if you're going fast and you have to skim the like
water.
Throwing a rock.
Yeah.
On the water.
Yeah, it'll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got to make sure you're going fast enough so that you can jump out on the other side.
Jump. A little risky. Did they actually have scooter races off Bayport? Or was it further east?
I can't ever remember having a race.
Yeah.
They raced off Blue Point, I guess.
Oh, did they?
In the 30s, yeah. Because I came across a membership card that my father had belonged to that same club.
Oh, okay.
And I can remember him talking about off of end of Blue Point
At the
Avenue.
end of Blue Point Avenue?
Yeah.
That
But
could well
then came the oil and brought the tanker in the bay, and that kept the ice from here, so they moved that whole
they
club
went further
down.
east.
Yeah, Bellport claims like it was the owner of that club, but really it was right down here in Blue Point.
Right off the coast.
Yeah.
But now there's no more tanker coming in, I believe.
No,
they don't do that.
No.
So
They all go to the North Shore.
Now, if only the cold weather would come back,
yeah, right.
we'd get to see these scooter races again.
Yeah, there was a couple of times there we scooted from the end of Paul Anna Avenue to across the bay.
Right over to the beach?
Yeah. We'd scoot back and forth.
And then turn back and come back.
It'd only take
Wouldn't take long.
No, it wouldn't take
It was
long.
about 5 miles, 4 miles.
Well,
Not
I think
too
it's
far.
about 3 miles from Bayport.
3?
Yeah. But there's a little longer from Blue Point. But I don't think they used to call that restaurant on the bay the 5 Mile Look.
Yeah, 5 miles over, supposedly.
Yeah, but that wasn't. I doubt it was 5 miles.
That was
over.
an estimate.
Yeah, it was an estimate. It sounded good.
It does. 5 mile look.
Advertising.
Sure.
Oh, let's see what else.
Yeah, what else is going on in Bayport?
What else is going on in Bayport?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Gene Ammon. Did you know him at all? He was a colorful guy.
I knew Gene Ammon, yeah. He was a good friend of my grandparents.
Oh, he was?
They lived on Nelson Avenue.
Oh, okay.
And they came out, that's how I'm out here probably, is that they summered out here in Blue Point in the early 1900s.
So it probably brought the family out.
My grandmother built the house as a summer house in 1920, I guess it was. And shortly after that, she decided she'd move out because of all the polio and stuff that was going on.
Get out of the city.
In the city for health reasons. And my grandfather continued to commute back and forth.
From Bayport?
Yeah. No, from Blue Point.
Oh, from Blue. Can't do that anymore.
No.
No more trains.
Oh, that was another part of my life. Just a railroad station.
Oh,
and,
Bayport had a beautiful station.
Yeah,
beautiful.
That was built by the residents of the town.
It was, huh?
Yeah.
It was a beautiful station.
Bayport had a lot of very wealthy people.
They had big estates. Yeah.
And they built it and decorated it and had, apparently, I'm told, I never saw it that way, but they had oriental rugs on the floor, and plush chairs, and a heated office. They had the railroad paid, I guess, for the attendant that kept the
place. Station master.
So I don't really know who owns that land. I
don't either.
Yeah. It doesn't. I don't think it ever belonged to the railroad. They might claim a lot of land like that.
Yeah.
And along the tracks there at the time, there was a double track in Bayport because there was a feed store and there was a coal yard. And there was Gulf Oil. They brought oil in by
train.
By train at that time. And there was before my time. There was a barrel factory, made barrels.
Oh, yeah, I heard of that. Yeah.
Barrels for shipping oysters to the city. And there was a Rupert Brewery that owned the land on the north side of the railroad between Bayport and Bayport Avenue and Snedeker Avenue.
Snedeker.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, Rupert. I knew it was a beer name, but I didn't know they were there.
Rupert Breweries. In fact, there's a picture somewhere to the railroad station that I saw recently, and you can just see the little bit of the sign on
Oh,
there.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the brewery.
Yeah.
Barrels in the brewery.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So, let's see. My activity, mostly when I was a teenager, I guess, was playing down on the water. In the Holman's Creek.
Of course.
The Holman's Creek was dredged out, I understand, about 1930. And all my time was down there. I can remember kids building a little boat and going down there. It wasn't very successful.
No. I wonder who he was, Holman. I know there was a house there.
Well, there was. They were alive when I was young.
Yeah.
There was Kate Holman and what was I forget his name.
Yeah.
Kate was the, and she would go around in town dressed in all these 1800 clothing.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, it was amazing to see her. Well, that was just an old person's clothing at the time.
Yeah, I know, but no.
But I don't think it was that generation. There was another generation of Homans.
Oh, before that.
That owned from the bay to the railroad track.
Wow, it's a big
that piece of woods that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There was a paper road down there on the west side of that piece called Holman Avenue.
Okay.
And that's right alongside the firehouse. That little
right,
road. That was part of the paper road. And it's still
a paper road.
Still a paper road.
But that one little road by the firehouse, that was part of it.
That was called Holman Avenue.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So where the firehouse is now used to be a strawberry fields.
A strawberry field.
When I was a kid,
Can you imagine that?
Yeah. And apparently, once for a while there, they must have grew asparagus too, because
they
there was
did?
a lot of asparagus in the field.
Okay.
And that was our shortcut to school, go through across that
Yeah.
woods.
Well, anything else you wanted to say to wrap this thing up?
Yeah, sure.
You're...
Well, it's been fun just for me to go over all
Yes,
these old
I'm
pictures,
sure.
you know.
Yes.
I found a lot of old pictures in here that, you know, just even after I got these back, I think there were like over 2,000 pictures in here.
Wow.
You know?
Isn't that amazing? Spanning quite a few years.
Now I have 4,000 pictures on my computer. But that's dates only to, you know, the 90s.
More recent.
Yeah, more recent.
More recent. Oh, what do you have? Oh, that looks like an oldie. It looks like...
I got this.
Looks
This is
like land surveyed.
This is
Is that the airport?
No. Here's the Bayport Park.
Okay,
Here's
Memorial
Esplanade.
Park.
Here's Paulana Avenue.
Paulana.
Right here.
Isn't that wonderful?
And here's Holman's Creek.
There's Holman's, yeah.
They hadn't drugged the canal yet.
Now, what year would this be?
It's here. It says surveyed May and June of
30s.
1916.
16?
1916.
And they had it already carved up into...
No, yeah, they it was
blocks.
proposed.
Yeah, proposed.
Because they didn't follow this.
No.
Because what happened is, on this side were all the estates.
Oh, yes, okay.
Post was down there.
Yeah,
Mrs. Cream was up here.
sure.
I don't know all the other names that were up here. But this was the stream that runs down from up the village.
Yeah.
It comes down. You see it, that low spot there when you go east.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Right there. And so this was Gerritson's property.
Gerritsen, yeah, the old name, yeah.
Now, he bought this from Holman, I guess.
Okay, yes.
This is what was called the Holman, because the Holman property,
And this were their children, James,
yes.
Henry. I thought there was
William.
another one in there. Oh, yeah, there was another one. Yeah, William.
Okay.
William Street.
And if you notice, he
Yeah.
got a proposed canal.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Proposed canal, yeah, right there.
And they were going to build a
But
road.
that never happened,
It
right?
never happened.
Never
Well, what
happened.
happened?
No.
I could spend another couple hours on
Yeah,
the whole list. The people lived on this side now
Yeah, over the
saw them
creek.
coming out with the proposal to put a canal,
Yeah.
but that cut them off from waterfront property.
They didn't want that.
Well, they had the bay.
Yeah, they had
Right?
the bay down
But they
there.
had this creek, right? So someone got the bright idea. Hey, why don't we get together and put a canal up here?
Sure.
And these people owned all the way over to here. This was not,
Yeah.
this was their property line. I guess they must own here.
People over here owned up to that line.
Yeah. Well, they mustn't have down here.
Yes.
I couldn't exactly say that, but
Yeah.
it was all lowland anyhow.
Yes. Yes.
So they got together and dug the canal along basically this line.
Yes.
Right? So it meant that they had to change Paulana Avenue. They continued straight down.
Yeah.
They moved all these
over.
lots over, and all these lots here got more land
Sure, right back to the creek.
back to the creek. See,
Sure.
my lot is here, and I'm 230 feet. These are only 150-foot lots.
That's difference.
See,
Yeah.
I can go over 50 feet.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Amazing. Very
Anyhow, when they dug this canal, they got together and they made a lot of covenants on the deed,
Oh,
and they're all filed out in Riverhead.
yeah.
But some of the people one of the covenants because covenants essentially was no commercial traffic, no unloading and offloading of coal and lumber and anything like that. It was
Residential.
a residential area.
Yeah.
And the center 60 feet of the canal was to remain navigable. You couldn't anchor in it or put your boat in.
Right.
If you wanted to put your boat in perpendicular, all these people on the other side dug in their own
Oh,
little
they did.
indentations. The canal itself was 100 feet wide, so you couldn't to keep 50 foot in the middle, you only really had, 25 on each side.
25.
Yeah. So you couldn't stick your boat out into it.
No.
Now, before I bought this lot, I had a sailboat when I was first got out of college. The first thing I did was buy myself a Nebraska tuck sailboat. And that's another phase of my life.
Yeah.
So
Pretty interesting.
So
Yeah.
I thought you might like this.
Boy, there's a lot to it.
Now, when I was a kid, none of this was developed.
No, it was all just woods, I guess.
It was all fallow
Woods.
land. There was only one house on this side here. Up here, there were some boathouses. Zerika had a boathouse. He had a boathouse here,
Okay.
and Hammer had a boathouse alongside of him, and O'Connor, Congressman O'Connor.
He was a congressman. A summer, wasn't he only a summer
Well,
resident?
they lived over on Snedeker.
Oh, they did.
And he lost his job. He got crossways with FDR in the 30s. You don't remember that?
No.
Okay. There's a lot of history about all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyhow, they had boathouses here, all with these dug-in
little
slots for their boats, Yeah. And then after the war, maybe it was near the end of the war, there was a guy named Kramer bought this lot from Zerika. It's just a small lot. But over the years, he accumulated the other boathouses and made a house. Baker lived there. Hans Baker?
No, I don't know.
But before Baker, there was a guy named Kramer. He took Zerika's boathouse and put a deck over that slipped them coming in.
Yeah.
Had a glass piece in the floor so he could look down into the water. Dirty old
Not
boat.
much to see.
Yeah. And they made like a squatter's cabin out of it. They were living in it. And anyhow, Hans Baker comes along and he buys it from this guy Kramer, and he buys the other. He ends up accumulating it. Now, some guy by the name of Riley, he just bought it recently from Baker family, and he knocked most of the cottages down. That each one of those people had a little boathouse down there with it, and Baker combined them. Each one was a bedroom, so he could have guests out, and they'd all sleep
Stay
out.
over.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
So anyhow,
Well, that's great.
I got this.
Yeah.
I got this here.
Middle road to the bay.
This
Oops.
apparently was on file in Suffolk County somewhere.
It's good that you got it.
And I got this from Gloria Paul. She graduated from me, and she did a lot of work for the guy that got the Heritage together.
Weinhardt, Don Weinhardt, yeah.
He sent a lot of these girls out to do a lot of
Yeah, they went out and did all that work in Riverhead.
Yeah, right.
On properties.
That's where this came from.
That's beautiful. It's good to have that.
And she
it's your
came,
house.
Yeah, she came in and gave me this.
All right, well, we thank you for coming in, Ed.
This marks the end of the interview with Ed Kennelly.